All right, hello and welcome to another video. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I skipped last week, so haven't really had anything to upload. So it's unfortunately been 6 months or so since the last video due to the lovely situation with our 4-month leagues. But it is what it is, and I'm back now and been playing a lot of Settlers here. So this is what, day 3, I believe, and I've been playing a lot, and been having a lot of fun. So I figured I'd make this video here going over my character and what I've been doing, as one does on the YouTubes. So I'm playing a Slayer Lightning Strike. Can you imagine? Yeah, very original. It's kind of funny. I was palming this after the patch notes, and it seems like everyone else was as well. We all came to the same conclusion of Slayer being good and Lightning Strike being good. So yeah, I'm part of that bandwagon. However, I'm doing a little bit of different things. Defensively and sort of offensively. Nothing original, people have done this before, but there's some different ways of doing it now with our new tools and stuff like that, but which I think will make it an interesting thing to talk about, at least for the video. So even if you're familiar with this sort of setup, maybe there'll be something for you to gain here. So yeah, let's just go over why Slayer Lightning Strike real quick. You probably know this already. So Slayer got really buffed because they buffed Endurance Charges this league, so Endurance Charges now give you elemental damage reduction as well as Fizz damage reduction, and Slayer gives you a bunch for free with this Master of Form node. So you use this, and then you stack Frenzy Charges, and you get a bunch of Endurance Charges as well, and you become really tanky, assuming you can keep them up. So that's really good. That's why Slayer. And then Lightning Strike got, alongside all the other melee skills, a big buff, doubled its base damage due to the removal of the Ancestral Warchief totems. And now a lot of Lightning Strike builds were just using one totem, and the buff was balanced around losing 2, so it sort of got more buff than average for a lot of builds using Lightning Strike, but yeah, it's really good. And then another little side buff was that Claws, which is usually the weapon type Lightning Strike uses most commonly, all got a buff to their base crit. They now have 1% more base crit, so that is just a nice little extra beat of crit you have. So Lightning Strike, I haven't played it since like Scourge League, but it is definitely back in action and maybe better than ever. It's very strong right now. So it's a very fun skill to use as well for clearing and stuff. It's very sort of zoomy skill, which is fun. But now, if we look at the gear here, this is sort of where, and I just managed to get this framework going. I spent all my last currency here to get this set up. It's sort of a little bit scuffed, but I'll go over it. It does function, and it gives the idea of where I want to take this going forward. So another thing this league brought back is the Kalandra jewelry. So in Lake of Kalandra, you can do this thing with your jewelry where you sort of reflect them, and it would either enhance or like inverse stats on them. So you can see you can make this sort of item right here where you have a bunch of wacky negative stats and then a bunch of like really juiced positive stats. So the way people did it back then, and the way I want to do it now, because I never got to try back then because I didn't play Lake of Kalandra, is you use it to get a bunch of negative lightning res, and then you use that. So you can see I have minus 79 to lightning res here and minus 71 to lightning res here, and you use that in combination with the Doryani's prototype chest piece, which sets nearby enemies' lightning res to equal to yours. So you stack negative lightning res until you hit the cap of minus 200%, and that makes it so that all the enemies around you have minus 200% lightning res, and then you do a bunch of lightning damage, and they die. Is the idea. So it's a huge damage amp. It gives you a lot of damage, this chest piece, but as most people know, comes with a downside. So obviously you have minus 200% lightning res. That's bad. You die. But this chest has a line that reads, armor also applies to lightning damage taken from hits. In order to counteract that, of course, the problem with this is it is only from hits, so you still die to lightning degens, which are actually pretty common nowadays because of the the mana siphon mod, the big blue circle in maps. That dude is a lightning degener, and that will just ruin your day if you're doing just this chest alone with negative 200 lightning res. So there are ways of mitigating this, and this is sort of where the interesting stuff comes in. And yeah, I'll sort of speed through this. Again, this is not something new. People have been doing this for ages and ages, but I never got the chance to. So this is my excuse to try it out, because I think it's a cool little thing. So the way you get around this is you shift all the elemental damage you take into all other elements, or I guess more importantly, you shift the lightning damage you take into other elements. And this is something you can do in POE, because POE is a cool video game. And the most commonly used method of doing this, and one of the cheaper ones, is using this shield. Mahuxotl's Machination is a wacky old shield, a bunch of keystones on it. If you press Alt, you get a seizure. But I'll sort of go through a little bit what this does. So it gives you a bunch of keystones. I believe they're all Vol themed, is sort of the idea here. And these are keystones you can get elsewhere, but one of them is special to this shield, and one of them is a timeless keystone. So normally, timeless keystones, you can only have one of, because you can only have one timeless jewel in your tree at once, obviously. So they aren't really built around having two, and this thing giving you the ability to have two at once is it gives you quite a lot of possibilities for some broken interactions. But let's just go over quickly sort of what the idea of this shield is and sort of what it does. I'm not going to go through every little bit of it, but I'll blaze through the sort of general design idea of it, right? So first of all, it makes it so that all damage you take bypasses your energy shield, just straight up. So your energy shield doesn't do anything really in regards to mitigation. Then it gives you a little bit of energy shield based on your life. This 1057 ES here has nothing to do with my gear. It is all from this shield and one of the keystones on it. And then it makes it so that that energy shield constantly degens and energy recharge doesn't work on it. So it's always going to be at 0 until you fill it with either leech, energy shield leech, or something like ghost dance would also work. So there's just other sources of recovery. And then it makes it so that your life leech, when it fills your life bar, moves over and starts filling your ES instead. And importantly, this is where the special keystone comes in, Everlasting Sacrifice. When your ES is full, it resets it back to 0 and gives you a 4-second buff called Everlasting Sacrifice. This buff gives you +5 max res to all elemental resistances and chaos res. So that is a very powerful buff. So maybe now you get the idea of sort of the gameplay loop I believe this shield is designed around is where you get enough leech and sort of energy shield recovery to counteract this degen and fill the ES that you have every 4 seconds in order to maintain that buff permanently and get permanent +5 max res to everything. Which is a very powerful buff because, max all res nowadays is actually pretty easy to get, especially this league with all the, you can get like +2 to a specific elemental res on like a rare jewel, I believe, which is kind of wild. But +5 max res to chaos res is actually pretty difficult to get, which anyone who's tried to can probably attest to as well. I think there's literally nothing for it on the tree. You kind of just have to go with cluster jewels, which is kind of cumbersome and takes up a lot of slots. So getting +5 just off of that buff alone is really good. And then it also gives you the timeless keystone Divine Flesh, which gives you another +5 to your max chaos res. So in total, if you can keep that buff up permanently, this shield will give you +10 to max chaos res, which is very good. The reason Divine Flesh gives you +5 max res to chaos is it does some other stuff as well. So Divine Flesh is the thing that makes it so that all damage you take bypasses your energy shield, and it makes it so that 50% of elemental damage you take is taken as chaos. So it shifts half your elemental damage into chaos damage. So now you kind of get what the idea is, right? So this shield on its own makes it so that half the lightning damage you take gets shifted into chaos damage, and then of course that is fine because we have a bunch of chaos res from the max res of the shield itself. So that's pretty cool. So we have now shifted half the elemental damage we've taken into chaos damage. So we now just need to handle the second half. So the people normally do this is they sort of combo it with another timeless keystone. So this is the Lethal Pride keystone, Tempered by War. I'll put it on screen right here. This makes it so that 50% of cold and lightning damage you take is taken as fire damage. And this is, again, it's not hits. It's just literally all cold and lightning damage you take is taken as fire instead. This stat is additive with the stat from Divine Flesh, which means that, if you have both these together, you take half fire damage, half chaos damage, nothing else. You no longer need to invest in cold res, lightning res at all, since all damage gets shifted to fire and chaos. And yeah, that's very cool. That completely fixes the downside of Doryani's prototype, and there are downsides to Tempered by War though. So this 50% less cold res, 50% less lightning res lines of text here initially don't sound like downsides, because again, we don't care about those resists, right? Lightning res doesn't do anything, and we want lightning res to be really low, because again, we want to hit the cap of -200% on ourselves, so we can put that on the enemies. And then cold res, like who cares? We're not taking any cold damage, because it's all fire and chaos. But because of how sort of it's weird. The way less works in POE with negative values is it's sort of it works the way you wish it didn't. So basically, with this on, instead of needing -200% lightning res in order to reach -200% on your character, you need -400% from your gear in order to reach it on your character. So basically, the less thing on there basically makes it so that every single thing just gets halved on all the items, right? Like all the stats. So these would, instead of -79 with Tempered by War, it would be like if it would give you, -40, so to speak. Hopefully I explained that reasonably well. But yeah, so it's a reasonable downside, because you would need to invest a lot more into negative lightning res than you would otherwise. And that is opportunity costs, and there are costs that come with it. Usually it's not actually that bad and it's super worth it. But I've decided to do a little bit different here, because it's early league, I don't have a lot of currency. That investment, I don't think I could afford right now, and I want to play this anyway. And there are more things you can do, because obviously if you can manage to shift enough damage off of lightning in order to make Doryani's prototype not super bad against lightning degens, then you free up a timeless keystone slot because you don't need to use Tempered by War. Then you can use something else, and that's where you can do some really cool stuff. So there are a bunch of new stats in the game on existing items. So what they did was they went through and they nerfed fizz damage taken as LE. This is a stat that was on a bunch of different pieces of gear, where you can shift the fizz damage you take into elemental damage, and that would get mitigated by your resistances. So it's a really it was a really easy way to get fizz mid on characters that don't have armor, basically. And basically every single character got a bunch of it. They don't want people to be able to fully convert to LE now from fizz. So a lot of stats on items that used to give fizz to LE now give something else. Case in point, Water's Eyes used to have all the different purities used to have fizz taken converted to the element of the purity. These are all now gone and they've been replaced with this stat right here. So this is the Purity of Ice version. So what used to be, fizz damage taken as cold, or fizz damage from hits taken as cold damage, now reads up to 20% of fire and lightning damage taken as cold damage while affected by Purity of Ice. So note how this wording is exactly the same as Tempered by War. This is not hits, this is not, it's all fire and lightning damage gets shifted to cold damage. And of course you could use this with Purity of Fire, and that would shift it to fire instead. If you so wish, I chose Pure Device for reasons I'll explain here in a second. So this is another up to 20% you can get from there. So now you have 50% from Divine Flesh from the shield, right? And then you have 20% from this, so you need to sell the remaining 30. So an item that was very popular and that has also been changed in this league is Taste of Hate. So Taste of Hate used to give you a big chunk of fizz taken as cold, which is a very nice defensive layer. This has now been removed and basically nerfed. The flask is a lot worse now for most builds. It now gives you up to, and you can get the meme here, right? It now gives you up to 30% of fire line damage from hits taken as cold damage during the effect. So if you can keep this up permanently, this would have fully solved the hit-based damage of those. Because if you read this in contrast to Tempered by War and the Water's Eye mod is actually just hits. So this is similar to the way the Doryani's prototype was worded. Dots go through this. So it's not perfect, but it does actually work for reasons I'll mention here in a bit. So with this mod and this Water's Eye mod, all hit damage gets converted. So now you suddenly don't take any fire or lightning damage as hits. You only take cold and chaos because of the shield and those two mods. So that's pretty good. And then of course, for the little bit of degens you take, so you're taking a bit of fire degen, because 30% of the fire degens wouldn't be converted into anything, and you just take that, and seeing as you're probably not investing into fire with this, that would do a lot of damage. The interesting part about this is that so the fire degens that exist in the game, right, is Ignite and then Burning Ground. Those are the big two. I don't know if there's anything else actually. So a nice little secondary bonus when you shift elemental damage like this is that ailments that rely on the hit that caused the ailment of being a certain type don't apply. Probably a terrible sentence there, but basically, if you shift your fire and lightning damage into cold damage, suddenly no hit is going to do fire damage and no hit is going to do lightning damage, which means that no hit can shock and no hit can ignite, because these are dependent on the hit. It's based on doing that damage type. So suddenly you are shock immune and you are ignite immune. So even though theoretically some amount of fire degen would go through this, seeing as I'm not fully shifting all the fire damage, ignite doesn't exist, because again, we're not taking any fire damage for hits. So that leaves Burning Ground. Burning Ground, you just take this Pantheon and you're good. Now we are still taking 30% of lightning degens with our terrible lightning res because of this, because I'm not shifting that. I've been playing around with this. I think this is a fine setup because, again, we are now stacking a bunch of charges, and we have 8, I believe, with this setup, endurance charges. And endurance charges give you 4% elemental damage reduction per charge. This applies to that lightning degen. It's just generic, it's not hits. So this then mitigates that. So it's basically 30% from what it would be, and then that gets mitigated by endurance charges, and the result is it's really not that bad. I've stood in Mana Siphon rings a lot, and like, it's been fine. So I think the setup works for that. End game, when I have Mage Blood and whatever, maybe I'll just go back to Tempered by War. I think I'll be fine. But the nice part about this is doing it like this frees up your Timeless Keystone, which means that you can use another one. And I believe the best one to use, and one that actually works really well with the setup, is Strength of Blood. So Strength of Blood makes it so that life recovery from non-instant leech is not applied, and you get fizz damage reduction based on how much you're leeching. I've used this keystone before on the channel. You might recognize it if you've remembered some of the old videos. But yeah, it gives you basically a lot of fizz mit for free, sort of. It's kind of nice, especially with this combo, because your overleech sort of already doesn't really do much, because your overleech just overleeches into your energy shield, and that is whatever. And it still works, because your overleech is kind of whatever anyway, because it just goes through and does it on the energy shield, which the energy shield with the setup gets insta full pretty much like in a few seconds. Like it completely tops off, you know, every few hits because of Volpact giving you full instant leech. It's very, very easy to keep the everlasting sacrifice buff up permanently. So losing out on the little bit of energy recharge you would get from the non-instant life leech portion of the Lion's Rock is not a big deal at all, and you're getting quite a sizable amount of fizz damage reduction because they have put a bunch of new nodes on the tree that give you that stat. So the way you scale how much PDR this gives you is you get this stat right here, which is increased maximum total life recovery per second from leech. You want to be pretty particular with the wording with reading this because there are similar stats with slightly different wording that don't scale Strength of Blood because of how wacky leech is in this game. But if you're getting this specific stat here, this is what scales how much PDR you're getting from Strength of Blood. So that's why I'm taking this node, this mastery, this node right here, or not that one, this one right here, and then I believe I'm taking these as well. So that makes that give you more PDR. Unfortunately, one of the keystones on the Mahuxotl's Machination Shield makes it so that you get it halves the recovery from your leeches, so that doesn't really work too well with Strength of Blood. It sort of nerfs it, but it's a powerful node. I believe my one gives me like 30% PDR or something, which is pretty good for a character where fizz damage reduction is actually a pretty big problem. So it's been a pretty good solution for that, I think, and it's been very cool to play with. I think it works really well. I think this defensive shell, while some of it is conditional, as it always is with sort of Slayer-based defenses, I feel like, it is very easy to keep up all the time, I feel like, and it is giving you a lot of mitigation. So again, we are taking only cold and chaos damage, and then we have a bunch of max res in both of those because, again, this shield gives you +5 to max res for the Ellie and then gives you +10 chaos max res. Again, very, very strong. And then, obviously, the way I'm shifting is I'm using Taste of Hate, which is a Sapphire Flask. This gives another +5, and then I have some flask effect, which I think improves that a little bit as well, so it gives more than 5. And then this is permanent uptime because we're using this with Tides of Time. This is one of the new builds from last night, I believe. This gives a utility flask 3 charges every 3 seconds, so basically a charge a second. This alongside some of the flask nodes here, and I believe up here as well. Yeah, I'm taking these. These alongside a few tattoos makes it so that Taste of Hate has 100% uptime. Even just AFKing like this, this is just up permanently, which is cool. So that is very reliable. So this never drops. Eventually, all these other ones would as well, but right now it's only the Diamond Flask that I believe I have permanent uptime on, alongside my other utility flasks. These don't currently because they're kind of scuffed because I just didn't have enough currency to finish them off, and I would need to invest more in more tattoos. I need like another 6 or so, I think, in order to get them to permanent, but yeah, that'll happen eventually. But yeah, it's I believe this belt is very cool. Mage Blood for this build would be better, but you know, it's day 3, not that crazy. And this is very cheap. It's like, I believe I got this for like 2 div or something, and it's only dropping because I believe it is a very common drop from Uber Shaper, I believe. So a lot of these are in the circulation, so they're generally pretty cheap. So it's like pickup, and yeah, it works really well, I think. And giving you 25% increased fast effect is just very good as well, so it's cool. Of course, eventually I would switch one of these out with a Progenesis whenever I would afford that, and this build would become very, very, very tanky. So that'd be fun, but that is quite a ways off still, unfortunately. But yeah, that's how I'm keeping that up. So yeah, character, it feels very tanky, even like in this early state of the build, where like a lot of my pieces are scuffed, like these boots are kind of like, they don't have move speed. They're all kind of nice suppression chaos res boots, but you know, the implicits are all fucked and no move speed. And yeah, it's basically like, actually these were kind of nice. I've just been spamming chaos essences on items. Also, like, have you seen how much fucking life you can get on items now? Like, look at this, the 133 max life on this helmet. It's kind of wild. But yeah. Like the gears kind of scuffed, my flasks are all like kind of mid rolled. I just used whatever alterations I had on them. These rings are pretty bad, like they're basically just there for the max res. I mean, this has some life on it, but you can get some really good rings. I mean, this in particular, this actually has 2 just actively bad mods on it. So yeah, those aren't great. So yeah, my gears kind of scuffed, but defensively it feels very, very strong. And offensively, it's pretty good as well. I mean, I'm just on a 5 link right now, and I believe it's like sitting at around, it's like 9-10-ish mil. DPS, conservatively speaking, so it's pretty good. I mean, this thing is gonna scale immensely. Like, you get so much free damage from this, and like my hood's kind of shitty, and yeah, there are infinite avenues of scaling. This is day 3; it'll go up. I have some endgame POBs with some very very clickbaity, convincing numbers, but I'm not going to show them right now. There's no point. So I figured we could take a look at the passive tree here real quick to sort of see some of the stuff I've been doing. There's nothing too crazy here. A lot of builds sort of take these nodes. A lot of this is also stuff that I'm going to amend eventually later on, but yeah, so this is what the passive tree looks like right now. So things to know, yes, we are using Laser Pride for Strength of Blood. Notably, this also is kind of nice because it gives a bunch of strength nodes. Actually, do kind of need the strength. I'm like just on the cusp, I think, of what I need on this build. So that's nice. And also, we are getting some useful nodes. I believe this one, yeah, +1 fort, which I don't actually know. I'm not getting fort right now, but in the end game version of this build, I will be getting fort, so that'll be something. 1% less damage taken is something. Then, yeah, this gives a little rage on hit. I believe, I mean, this is kind of whatever. 1 rage on hit is actually not very much, even if we're hitting a lot. 2 rage a second, not a huge amount, but I mean, does something, which is kind of nice. Then I believe I get intimidate off of this as well, so it's kind of nice. But yeah, you can get a bunch of like double damage nodes and stuff if you want to really splurge out. But yeah, it's an okay one. And then again, what's out here? We're just getting claw nodes, as many life nodes as reasonable. I'm only level 92 right now, so a bunch of passive poison left. But yeah, frenzy charge generation via the Mark Mastery, as you would expect. Getting some elusive scaling here because again this is a claw build, so we're using lightning blade, which is pretty cool. Taking every frenzy charge, some suppression nodes here, and then getting this point here because this caps our suppression. Projectile nodes, the flask nodes for again taste of hate sustain, and then this is just the leech scaling, more life, leech scaling. I'm currently using iron reflexes because I believe that is better than not doing it, and then I'm using a very large thread of hope here in order to just save some points. This is not really required, but it does save a few points. It also would leave, there's some nodes you can take up here, or yeah, I believe this node's alright. Gives you 50% reduced mana cost, and this is something that is kind of an issue this league because melee mana cost is kind of wild. So you can take this as well with this, which is kind of nice. Also a nice part about Thread of Hopes is that they give you minus to all elemental resistances. With this build is kind of an upside because it gives you minus lightning res, so in a way it scales your damage. I believe I would still be at minus 200 even without this, so that doesn't actually do anything for me right now, but that is something cool to keep in mind. If you maybe want to remove one of these rings, you could like have a couple of Thread of Hopes, or like throw a melding in here, which would give you minus 80, so there are other ways, non-Kalandra jewelry ways of getting minus lightning res as well, so that's cool. I'm getting this charge mastery here with duration. This is, I think, by far the best mastery here. Some people like taking the 3% increased damage per charge, which is, you know, it's a sizable amount of damage given that you have a bunch of charges, but the duration node is just so good. Doubling the duration of your charges is very, very nice. And yeah, seeing as we're so reliant on our charges, it's really good. Obviously, in the end game, you will use Ral Kesh boots. Then you could remove this and get the damage, but because then your charges are up all the time. But yeah, until then, yeah. Then I'm just getting this frenzy nodes here because they're just good. They're just all good nodes pretty much, so there's no reason to unspec them. Yeah, otherwise nothing too crazy in the tree. Gear-wise, Doryani's the shield. Otherwise, it's just like decently rolled rares. This is the best I've managed to craft myself. Again, I've just been spamming Chaos Res essences on these. You really do need to cap your Chaos Res on this character because, again, we are shifting half our damage to it, so Chaos Res is actually very important. So that's why, again, I'm a bit overcapped there. For the amulet right now, I'm just using alls. I think all's pretty good. I'm using a pure device one because that was really cheap. Eventually, you would obviously want to use one of the 50% auras, and also there might be a better amulet even than that. But yeah, I don't know. As you can see, I have a bunch of sockets open. I've not really figured everything out. I just got this framework set up and working, so I'm not really put much work into it. But you know, Blood Rage, actually I should remove because I'm not really, can't really, when you're doing this whole Mahuxotl setup, Blood Rage degen is not really something you want to deal with, so Blood Rage you have to remove, unfortunately. But we're still getting Frenzy Charge generation from the Monk Mastery, and we also have it on kill here, so it's even faster. So the only thing Blood Rage really does for us is a bit of an attack speed boost, which is nice, but not necessary, so you just skip that. Otherwise, for the Curse, Marknet as Mark gives you a bunch of power charges and some nice crit, which is cool. I'm using Molten Shell for guard skill, just cast some damage taking it. Using that because, again, we're doing iron reflexes. I believe right now with the scuffed gear, when I have my flasks up, it's like 30k-ish armor, somewhere in that range, so it's like a decent little Molten Shell. It's not like huge or anything, but it's pretty good. It's better than the alternatives anyway. And yeah, I believe there's nothing too much else. I'm using, oh yeah, for endurance charge regeneration right now, for mapping, there's the on kill from this node right here, and then I'm just manually casting Enduring Cry for bosses. One of the problems with this build right now, and there are some weaknesses for sure, a lot of it is just growing pains, because again, it's day 3 and I've just managed to set this up, is downtime. Like, the endurance charge regeneration is relatively conditional, in that, yes, you do have full endurance charge uptime during mapping and bosses, theoretically, but there's like during boss downtime, if they fall off, you have to shout twice near the boss, and if they're like phasing or something, that might not work. And yeah, there are times when your endurance charges fall off and you become very squishy, so that's kind of something I don't love about it, but that's quite rare and it's really only in big boss fights. And late game you would just use your Alkesh boots and that would solve that problem, so it's very much just a growing pain sort of thing, but that is definitely a weakness of the current setup. Yeah, that's something I'll work on in the future, and by work on I mean just save up enough for the boots, I guess. In the future I'll probably switch a lot of damage nodes that I've taken here into cluster jewels. There's some very powerful large and medium clusters you can use here for big damage, and I'll probably switch like this bottom, like basically at some point I'm gonna get crit capped without having to spend all these crit points, and then at that point I can just unspec like the bottom half of the claw nodes and then just get a cluster or something like that and scale further that way. And then obviously eventually I'll get Pierce on gloves with the unveil. I just need to do it. I need to have the currency to craft it, so when I would hit that, I would just drop these Pierce nodes, and that will give me 3 passive points, so that's nice. And obviously, if I could get more suppression on gear, I could maybe drop that node at some point, and etc. etc. So yeah, a lot of ways to go there, but that's sort of the current tree. We can take a quick look in POE to see how the numbers stack up for those of you who like that. So this is the current POE of this character. You can see sort of the numbers here. So this is 4 million for the melee hit, and then obviously you're hitting. I'm not currently using a return charge, so my current links for Lightning Strike. Let's remove this right now. So I'm just on a 5 link because I'm poor and it's early. But yeah, I'm using Lightning Strike, Maul Strike, Volatility, Nightblade, and Awakened Added Lightning. I would use Return Proj on this, I think, but I just couldn't color it right. I don't have enough chromes. It's kind of tricky getting 3 off colors, or 4 even, because you probably want a blue in there. But yeah, you'd probably replace Volatility for Return Proj, but I'm just gonna add it as the 6th link whenever that happens. But yeah, so this is on the 5 link, so it's about 9 million, given that you can hit very easily double hit with both the melee hit and projectiles. With Return Proj, you can actually triple hit, I believe, so that would add another hit there. Taking point blank, because I'm not using Return Proj. If I was using Return Proj, I would unspec this, because it's kind of you're kind of fucking yourself over if you have both of those together. I don't think you want both of those at once, so whenever I get Return Proj with my 6th link, I will unspec this and get a passive point and do something else with it. But yeah, so pretty good damage for this early, I believe, and then quite tanky. So this is, I mean, these aren't huge numbers compared to some of the other stuff I've shown on this channel, but this is day 3 gear, and it is without guard skills. So if I activate Molten Shell, you can see sort of what happens there. So it's pretty good. It feels very tanky, and noticeably so. And yeah, like it's very nice being like this elemental tanky and this chaos damage tanky as well. Feels great. Obviously, it is conditional to you hitting things and leeching and getting the buffs and stuff to Everlasting Sacrifice. But that's just your things. And if push comes to shove, you could throw on a Warm Flask, and then you can just have a leech on command, and that'd be very good as well. Right now, I'm not using it because I've just been doing mapping, and it's been fine. But that's something you could do if you want to do bossing or whatever. So that's pretty cool. So quite tanky. Fizz hit isn't the biggest. This is definitely the weakest part right now of the build. Even with Strength of Blood, it's not like massive, but it is a nice little chunk there. I believe it's like, yeah, right now it's 25% more Fizz hit from Strength of Blood, which, you know, you could argue, you know, isn't maybe worth the investment. Like, maybe I should unspec some of these nodes because they aren't scaling a huge amount of Fizz. Like, this is 2 points for not a huge amount of EHP, but it is, you know, kind of nice, and it scales your leech as well. So I don't think it's too bad. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing, at least for now. But yeah, in the end game, when I get like a Mage Blood or something, and whenever that happens, I might switch back to Tempered by War, and then I would, you know, drop some of these leech nodes. But for now, I think the setup's really cool, and it is very nice being able to use this because this basically has no downside to the build. Usually in builds, giving up the life recovery from non-leads and leech is actually quite a big deal, but with this setup, it literally does nothing, that downside. So yeah, you just get a bunch of PO for free, kind of. So I think it's cool. But yeah, obviously, you know, this is stuff I'm going to work on more as things go on. But yeah, it's been a very fun start with this. I've really been enjoying this character, and I think the setup's pretty cool for what it is. And yeah, it feels pretty good to play. So I figured let's do some gameplay, shall we? So I figured I would do some live gameplay here for once, rather than edited together clips. So I'll just run through a quick little, you know, Conq map here. It's not the most difficult thing in the world by any means, but I don't know. I don't have any. Again, I've just been sort of doing my Atlas stuff, my Atlas completions and bosses and stuff, and washstones and league mechanicking, so I don't really have access to much super hard content right now to show you, but I figured we can just do this map, because why not show you sort of what this build feels like. It's not going to be very crazy. It's, you know, it's a Lightning Strike build. Oh yeah, you run around, whirling blades, you hit things with Lightning Strike, and they die. and it feels pretty good. So you can see the everlasting sacrifice. If you look at my ES of down there, it's going crazy, and every time it fills up and blinks like that, it gives me the buff. So if you want to look at my defenses here, when it's 90-85, that means that buff is up. So you can see that it's basically, I mean, it is permanently up. I should probably not press that shrine. I expect into shrines because I think shrines are fun. You know, I don't know, I don't think it really needs it. I just like getting Excel shrines, you know, it just feels good. Yeah. So attack speed isn't great right now on this build. I mean, you can see how much unreserved mana I have. I'm trying to figure out what to do with auras and like all that stuff. I've not really put much thought into it just yet, because again, I really only just got this set up a few minutes ago, or not minutes ago, I guess hours ago, but cause I had to make this video, but yeah, you get what I mean. So a lot of things are known, but yeah, something I want to solve is I want to increase the attack speed, but there's infinite avenues of, you know, doing that. Even easily accessible things of necessity. You can just drop the ball values right down and then they all just die. Feels pretty good. And yeah, I think for, you know, being this early in the league, I'm very happy with the state of this build. Sometimes some of the single target can be a bit, you know, this guy's kind of very tanky actually. Big boy. Alright, there you go. Here's Hunter. Hunter obviously very chaos. Here my charges might drop. Actually, they might not. We'll see. I'm gonna do, yeah, okay. So I got to keep my charges here. Yeah. So I'm color here in a bit. So not the craziest damage in the world, pretty good. So yeah, and I don't know if I even got double hits most of the time there, so probably a lot lower than normal, but yeah, that felt good. So let's go back. I think I even have a, yeah, we can do an invitation as well, why not? Oh, I should probably roll it. Keep forgetting you can roll those now. Here's an Elder Slayer invitation. See how this goes. So, just want to make sure, keep the charges up. So, yeah, one of the weaknesses is obviously you have to, try and focus rocks down first, actually. A single shout only gives you 5 charges when you're near a boss, so you need to shout twice, and there's a, you know, fair, you know, non-negligible cooldown to it, so you'd probably start off fights, you know, not fully charged up, which isn't, you know, super great, but again, that's something that fixes with well, I'll catch boots eventually. Who's that? I'm gonna get chilled. That's something, ailment immunity is actually something we can talk about here. So I'm gonna just kill these. So again, I think pretty good for the state of the game. I'm pretty fine with it. Okay, so ailment immunity. I'm not really getting it right now. I am, as I said, I'm getting the immunity from shifting the damage and then my pantheons, but I'm, for example, mostly notably, I'm not chill immune and I'm not alt ailment immune. This is mainly just like a result of me not having any currency left after doing all this shit. What I think I'll do eventually is just get an ancestral vision. I think that's probably the most efficient way for me to do that. Ancestral vision, and then recraft these boots with the essence that gives avoidance, and then that together. I mean, this is, you know, everyone who's played POE for the last few years knows this, but you just get this cluster here of nodes, and that gives you enough avoidance alongside the boots to have full ailment avoidance with just a ancestral vision, which is very nice. You can also, you don't even have to take those, you can just do it with the Eldritch Implicit as well, but then usually you need the perfect tier implicit, and that's a bit of a not fun thing to get, but you know, that works too if you so wish to do that. But yeah, that's kind of some gameplay right there. I think this character is quite cool. I've really been enjoying it so far. I've just wanted for so long to have an excuse to play with this shield because I think it's such a cool little wacky item. It's like the most POE item ever. I think it's very cool. And this build is really good at it. You saw that, you know, this thing, it just fills up the ES completely immediately, and you just have the buff on for the, you know, ever pretty much. So it's very cool. Still stuff to fix to this build. I have, you know, 6 sockets I'm using, 7 even, and you know, but that's just, you know, that just makes it more fun. So yeah, that's sort of an overview of what I'm doing right now. Hopefully I can have more of these coming up in the future as I change things around, but yeah, I'll link an early POB of this character. I have later POBs prepped, but I'm not going to share them just yet, just because, you know, I don't know, I don't see a point. But yeah, this is what the character is right now, and I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm glad to be back doing the YouTube thing. Hopefully this video was somewhat fun to watch. I had recording this, you know, a learning curve. It's been a while, but yeah, hopefully so you got something out of it. All right. if you want to watch this, I'm streaming. I stream most of my gameplay on Twitch right now, so you can just hop on over there. Link is in the description. It's just SebK94. I might try and stream on YouTube as well if I figure out the restream thing, but right now I kind of just want to play POE, so I haven't really taken time to do it. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.